Coming in a moment on Art Rocks, Louisiana singer, songwriter and Hall of Famer Doug Duffey gets the blues.
You know, off and on I've been doing recording albums all this time, and I've always been a songwriter.
A very human world captured in black and white.
There's no window dressing, there's no color, it's just the image, and it's the person, and it's the eyes that come through.
These stories are up next on Art Rocks.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, welcome to Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith from Country Roads Magazine. Monroe, Louisiana musician, composer, record producer and poet Doug Duffey has been singing and playing the blues for half a century. That's long enough to have gotten him inducted into both the Louisiana and the National Blues Halls of Fame. Now in his 70s, Duffey is still playing and recording, and writing poetry and making visual art too. Here's Doug to share the story of a lifetime in music.
This is a song that I had actually written before I went to Hollywood, and it's called Delta Melody. Thinking today of finding my way back to the Delta, where summer is creeping and children are sleeping 'neath magnolia trees in the soft southern breeze. I think of the times we sat and drank wine down by the river, loving each other with night as our cover, with moss as our bed, as you thickly spread all your warm. I sang in church when everybody was singing. That was the kind of thing, that's how I learned to sing basically. It wasn't like I sang in church in a choir or anything. I started studying classical piano when I was around 11 or 12, and I was really into classical music, which is unusual for where I come from. And then suddenly the British invasion hit, and I decided, well, I don't want to be Van Cliburn or somebody, I don't know, I'm just picking a name. But anyway, I decided, nah, that's not what I want to do. I think I want to sing rock and roll instead. My parents listened to blues records all the time. They had Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, Slim Harpo, Chuck Berry, but just a lot of blues. When did I start singing solo or whatever? Probably around the age of 14. Started my first little bands. The teenage band was called The Secrets, and we were basically doing cover music of whatever the British and rock bands were doing, but we were also covering everything in the top 40. And I was playing at recreation centers around Monroe, and occasionally private parties and for high schools, things like that. Oh, I thought I was rich. I think I was making like $40 or $50 a week. So that was, for me in 1960 and being a teenager, that was great because I could then take all my money and go buy records and clothes, which is what I did. And that band dissolved as I aged. I finally had a band that was mostly some of the best musicians in this area, and we were doing original music, but also some cover tunes. We actually went to Colorado, and we were in Colorado for about 2 or 3 years, and then we came back, and I had an offer to go to Little Rock to be the singer of a band called Merging Traffic, who had had a national hit called Bit by Bit, and I went to replace the singer, and they had a recording contract to do another album, or to do another single, I'm not sure which. That band ended up breaking up, and I ended up having done the vocals on the next track that was supposed to be released, and it was released, but it was under a different name. It was a single, it was called Merrily Thompson. I made it to Cashbox Record World. I was 20. I had to have my parents sign for me to sign the record contract. There's always been kind of a springboard between Louisiana and then Colorado and Louisiana and Little Rock. I was playing in a club in Little Rock, and the managers from Parliament Funkadelic came in, and they heard me playing, and they said, well, if you ever come to Hollywood, give us a call. And I went out to LA, and I started recording and writing mainly for other people, for Rare Earth, with George Clinton. Did backing vocals with Nicky Hopkins, who's a very famous piano player. Played with the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks and the Who and everybody. So I was kind of, just breaking in out there, trying to get a record deal. The management company was Backstage Management, and they managed George Clinton, Bootsy Collins, Fred Wesley, Maceo Parker, and Martha Reeves, a huge amount of people. And they had a huge roster. I was the baby on the roster, the last kid on the totem pole. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, and I wrote a lot for a lot of different people, and wrote a lot of songs for myself. I was there for about 4 years. This next song is called Louisiana, and it was written in Hollywood in the early 70s when I was feeling a bit homesick and ready to come home. And this is one of Dan Sumner's favorite songs, so we're going to do it for you.
Roots could never be discarded.
I had moved back to Louisiana. During that time when I was writing for these other people, I was writing with George Clinton. Another synchronicity thing, when I was 16, my girlfriend and I skipped school and jumped off the bus at Head's Palladium because we saw all these strange looking people in all these costumes in broad daylight going into this club. And we were going, we were too young to go in the club, of course, but we got out and it was, sure enough, it was Funkadelic. We had on like a bed sheet and crazy clothes and all this stuff. That was also very synchronistic that I end up meeting them when I'm 16, and then later in life, in my 20s, I end up meeting them again in Hollywood. And we're managed by the same people. And I ended up working on Bernie Worrell's album as well in 1990 or 91 in New York. I was in different bands in New Orleans, and I really wasn't making any money with bands in New Orleans. We weren't traveling, we weren't going out on the road. I luckily fell into a situation where I had a house gig on Bourbon Street, playing piano and singing in this bar, and they just let me do anything I wanted to do. One of the songs I do a lot and have done for many years is an old New Orleans song that was written by Ned Theod and Fleecy Moore called Let the Good Times Roll. And everybody's heard that song, of course, but you know, I do my own version of it as well as can be expected, but here we go. I said, hey, everybody, let's have some fun. You know you only live once, and when your days are done, so let the good times roll. Yeah, let the good times roll. No matter if you young or old, get together, baby, let the good time roll. Don't just sit there talking trash. You want to have some fun, you got to spend some cash and let the good time roll. Yeah, let the good time roll. No matter if you young or old, get together, baby, let the good time roll. Hey, Mr. Bartender, lock all the doors. When the police come, tell them this joint's closed. Let the good time roll. Yeah, let the good times roll. No matter if you young or old, get together, people, let the good time roll. Everybody say, let the good time roll. You let the good times roll. Let the good times roll. You let the good time roll. No matter if you're young or old, get together, let the good times roll. Well, all right. So I did that for a couple of years, and that was, it was great because I didn't have to travel. I knew I was working 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever. I had a schedule, I had a life. I could pretty much live like normal people. And then I got a call from an agent in Paris wanting me to go to Switzerland and play for 2 months or 3 months. So I said, okay. So I went and pretty much stayed. When I was first over there, I was working all over the place. I worked in Berlin, Germany. I worked everywhere in Europe except France. France doesn't pay. Everywhere else, like Holland and Belgium, and I was flown over to work on an album by Sony to work with a singer named B.J. Scott, who's originally from Alabama, but she had been wandering down Bourbon Street and heard me playing, and she said, wow, I got to have you come and play on my album. I said, okay. As I walk down the avenue. I eventually was in Switzerland again, which is where I started out, and met my agent and have been working with her for the past 30 years. People in Europe, they're very educated on the blues and on American music. They literally study it. They can tell you piano players' names that I've never heard of, like back in the boogie woogie days and stuff like that. They're especially crazy for boogie woogie type stuff and that kind of older American music. Off and on, I've been recording albums all this time, and I've always been a songwriter. I've never stopped writing songs. My agent, Jacqueline Troxel, was here from Switzerland, and some friends of mine, Jeremy Davis and the fabulous Equinox Orchestra, were doing a concert, and they invited me to come sing some songs because they had recorded one of my songs, New Orleans Rain.
New Orleans rain keeps pouring down, matching my tears as it falls to the ground, and I'm all alone in the heart of the town, longing for someone who don't come around. New Orleans rain falls like my tears. You know the tears I've been crying.
Little did I know, but Mr. Daniel Sumner was playing guitar on that night with the fabulous Equinox Orchestra. So later I get a call from him, or a message, I can't remember which it was, and he says, I want to go on the road with you. I said, well, hook it up. I guess that would be history, because that was the exact phrase used. And so we got together and started working together and did the Louisiana Soul Revival album, and that's what we started out as, the Louisiana Soul Revival, because that's pretty much what we both had in mind to do.
The Louisiana Soul Revival Band was a big band with horns, a big horn section, and sometimes with an organ player, and Doug on piano. And playing all of Doug's original compositions, I arranged the horn parts and everything, and then we decided to make a record.
Everybody wants a little piece of the action, won't you get some action?
Make contact with Doug, and then to start to work together, and to have worked together for the last 7 years with him has been incredibly rewarding. And artistically and friendship-wise, you know, Doug and I are close friends. We work together, we fight and argue like brothers, but we create a lot of music together, and we push each other in lots of ways, musically. And it's, I find Doug's playing and writing to be incredibly inspirational.
And we've got another funk album, because BAD started out. BAD is an acronym for Ben, Adam, Dan, and Doug. And our first album was a total funk album. It was a total jam session that we ended up going in and editing, and the B-roll and the A-roll and all that stuff. I have my picture of my induction into the Blues Hall of Fame, and the ambassador of Monroe and the mayor of the city gave us, we have Louisiana Soul Revival featuring Doug Duffey Day every February 22nd. That was the day we released our first album.
Tell it like it is. Don't you be afraid to let your conscience be your guide. Tell it like it is. Go on and forget your foolish pride.
In Louisiana, inspiring art is everywhere. The trick is knowing where to find it. So here are some standout exhibits coming up in our part of the world. For more on these exhibits and scores more cultural attractions, consult Country Roads magazine, available in hard copy or online. Or to see or to share any episode of Art Rocks again, visit lpb.org/artrocks. There's also an archive of all the Louisiana segments of the show available on LPB's YouTube page. Photographer Sal Patalano has been described as a master street portrait artist. And when you see the images that Patalano, who left a career in corporate America and took to the streets with camera in hand, you'll understand why. Let's go to Florida, where Patalano spends 6 months each year to see how he captures astonishingly revealing black and white portraits of the people he meets on the streets. These images have the ability to leave a lasting impact, so watch.
My name is Sal Patalano. I retired 2 years ago from corporate America, and I started photographing people on the street, and I've fallen in love with it. My recent work has been of Ybor City. Today, I thought we might take a ride down to Ybor. It's part of Tampa. I just think it's a great little area, and I'd love to walk around, on 7th Avenue. I'll try to approach a couple of people and see if they'll allow me, to take their photograph.
Wait, make sure I look good.
My mother bought me my first camera at the old W.T. Grant in Somerville, Massachusetts, and it cost 99 cents. So I think it's always been in my blood to do that. Believe it or not, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but growing up, I was always shy. I've never had my picture taken in my high school yearbook or my college, never wanted my picture taken. But I think I can approach people, I don't mind the rejection. I'm very fortunate. I think that if I ask and I approach, 20 people, I might get maybe one a rejection. One thing that kind of, I think, breaks the ice is I tell them that, I'm retired. My doctor tells me that I have to walk. So what I do is I use my camera, I walk up and down the streets, and I take photographs of people that I meet on the street. And everybody says, that's good, And then what I try to tell them is, try to tell me something about yourself just by using your eyes. And a lot of times, I think that comes through. Probably sometimes they trust a stranger more than they do, a family member or a friend. There is a photographer by the name of Ted Grant, and he was a photojournalist. And he said that when you photograph people in color, you photograph their clothes. He said, but when you photograph people in black and white, he said, you photograph their soul. And I think it's very true. There's no window dressing, there's no color. It's just the image, and it's the person, and it's the eyes that come through.
The experience of just someone pulling you over and saying, hey, real quick picture, that's it, and here's my information. It's cool because you don't experience that every day. So I just why not? And I mean, it also gives him an opportunity to spread more of his work out.
What I do is I give him my card, and I tell him, if you send me an email, and just describe a little bit who you are, because I photograph a lot of people, I will send them, images via email, always free of charge. I never charge a penny. I have a couple of exhibitions coming up. So that's what I like to do with them. I like to exhibit them. The money goes either to a food pantry or a homeless shelter, so I don't, make any money.
I was out with my family. I walked out, I seen they were already taking pictures, so I just jumped in the picture. And I really don't have no problem with taking pictures. I'm an artist myself.
I see beautiful faces on the street. I see people that are well-to-do, and then I see people that are not as well-to-do. But I think if you look a little deeper, they're all the same. I saw this gentleman with a hat sitting a little, window in Ybor. And I first approached him one day, and he didn't want to be bothered. And I could understand. So I went back the next day, and he was sitting there, and I said, do you remember me? And he said, yeah. And I said, can I take your picture? He said, yeah. And I said, what's your name? And he said, William. So it's little stories like that that really touch me. Another one, there's a woman that was sitting on a bench, and I started talking to her, and I found out that she spent her entire career in the Navy. And, this is where she ended up. How does, somebody end up like that? And, and that's another kind of a little story that really touched me. And I'll tell you just one third one. It's one of my favorite. Right at the end of Ybor, there's a a little pizza shop, and there was this lady there, and I found out that she was actually hard of hearing, and she couldn't speak. And I motioned to her, and she allowed me to take her photograph. You know, so those are the type of stories that I think really mean a lot to me. I carry some socks. I had heard some time ago at a homeless shelter that one of the things that they ask for most is clean socks. So, you know, I tried to accommodate that. I just gravitate to people that might have been walked over, or people that, you know, that nobody may want to see, and sometimes I may go overboard, but it's important for them to be seen. You know, I photographed people in Florida, you know, all the way up the East Coast, New Hampshire, New York City. The thing is that, you know, again, you see a million different faces, you see a million different people, but you know what? When it's all said and done, we're all the same.
And that'll be that for this edition of Art Rocks. But that's okay, because you can see and share episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks anytime. And if these sorts of stories crank your creative tractor, remember that Country Roads magazine is a great resource for making the most of Louisiana's boundless cultural treasures each and every month. So until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thanks to you for watching.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.